It all began when my father remarried. His new wife, Clara, was charming, beautiful, and seemingly perfect in every way. Everyone adored her. At first, I did too. She was attentive, kind, and always willing to help me with whatever I needed. But as time went on, subtle changes began to appear. One evening, about a month after they got married, I noticed Clara watching me from the doorway as I did my homework. Her eyes were cold and calculating, a stark contrast to her usual warm demeanor. I tried to shake off the unease, chalking it up to my imagination. After all, Clara had given no reason to distrust her. But the feeling persisted. A few days later, I found my toothbrush wet before I'd used it. I asked Clara about it, and she laughed, saying she must have knocked it over while cleaning. It seemed plausible, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I started to pay closer attention to the small things. My belongings were frequently out of place, and food in the fridge that I specifically remembered saving for myself would vanish. I asked my father, but he brushed it off, saying I was probably just forgetful. As the weeks passed, Clara's behavior became more overtly sinister. She'd leave the gas stove on, forget to pick me up from school, or serve me meals that made me feel queasy. I began to keep a journal of these incidents, convinced that something was very wrong. My friends noticed my growing paranoia and tried to reassure me, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that Clara was intentionally trying to harm me. One night, I awoke to the sound of footsteps in my room. In the dim light, I saw Clara standing over me, a strange look on her face. She quickly turned and left, and I lay there, heart pounding, wondering what she was doing. The next morning, I found scratches on my arm that I couldn't explain. I showed them to my dad, but he said I must have scratched myself in my sleep. Clara was standing behind him, smiling that same cold smile. I knew I had to do something, but I felt trapped. Clara was careful to never leave any concrete evidence, and my father was completely under her spell. I decided to set up a hidden camera in my room, hoping to catch her in the act. For days, nothing happened. I began to doubt myself, wondering if I was just being paranoid. But then, one night, the camera captured everything. I watched the footage in horror as Clara entered my room, holding a small vial. She approached my bed and sprinkled something on my pillow. My breath caught as I realized she was trying to poison me. I took the footage to my father, but he refused to watch it. He accused me of fabricating the video and told me to stop making baseless accusations against Clara. Desperate, I went to the police. They were skeptical but agreed to investigate. When they questioned Clara, she put on an Oscar-worthy performance, tearfully denying everything and painting me as a troubled, attention-seeking teenager. Without solid evidence, they couldn't do much. I felt defeated, but I wasn't going to give up. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started researching the substances Clara was using, finding out that they were all untraceable, slow-acting poisons. I began to document everything meticulously, keeping a detailed log of dates, times, and symptoms. I also reached out to a private investigator, hoping he could help me gather the evidence I needed to expose her. As the investigation progressed, I discovered that Clara had a history of targeting wealthy men. She'd been married twice before, and both husbands had died under suspicious circumstances, leaving her with substantial inheritances. This was the break I needed. Armed with this information, I went back to the police. This time, they took me seriously. Clara was arrested, and my father was in shock. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved had been plotting to kill me. The trial was long and grueling, but eventually, Clara was found guilty of attempted murder and several other charges. She was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, and my father and I were left to pick up the pieces of our shattered lives. The experience left me deeply scarred, but it also made me stronger. I learned to trust my instincts and to stand up for myself, no matter how difficult the circumstances. My father and I grew closer, and we worked together to rebuild our lives, free from the shadow of Clara's malice. However, The nightmare was far from over. Even with Clara behind bars, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Strange things started happening again, things I couldn't explain. The lights in my room would flicker, I would hear whispers in the hallways, and cold drafts would seep through even when the windows were closed. One night, I woke up to the sound of a woman crying. I got out of bed and followed the sound to the attic. It was a place I rarely visited, and the wooden stairs creaked under my weight. The crying grew louder as I approached the attic door. With trembling hands, I pushed it open and was met with darkness. I fumbled for the light switch, and when the bulb flickered to life, I saw here an apparition of a woman in a tattered dress, standing in the corner, her eyes hollow and sorrowful. My heart raced as I realized who she was. I had seen her face in the old family photo albums of my father's first wife, my biological mother. She had died when I was very young, and I had few memories of her. The ghostly figure raised her hand, pointing to an old, dusty trunk in the corner. I hesitated but felt compelled to obey. As I approached the trunk, the crying ceased, and the room fell into an eerie silence. I opened the trunk to find a collection of my mother's personal belongings, her diary, letters, and a few photographs. Among the items was a small, intricately carved box. Inside it, I found a note addressed to me. "Dear Emma," it read, "if you are reading this, it means that the evil I feared has come to pass. Clara is not who she appears to be. She has been after your father's wealth for a long time. She is dangerous. Protect yourself and your father. Trust no one." The realization hit me like a freight train. My mother had known about Clara all along. She had tried to warn us from beyond the grave. I took the diary and the letters and made my way back to my room. Over the next few days, I pored over my mother's writings, learning about her suspicions and the strange occurrences that had plagued her before her untimely death. My mother's spirit continued to appear to me, guiding me to hidden clues and secrets that Clara had tried to bury. With this newfound knowledge, I started to piece together the full extent of Clara's malevolence. It wasn't just about the money, there was something darker at play. I confided in my father, showing him the diary and the letters. The weight of the evidence, combined with his love for my mother, finally broke through his denial. He was devastated by the truth but vowed to protect me and honor my mother's memory. We decided to visit Clara in prison, hoping to get answers. The visit was harrowing. Clara's once perfect facade had cracked, revealing the true darkness within her. She laughed when we confronted her, mocking our fear and telling us that we had only scratched the surface of her plans. She spoke of ancient rituals, curses, and a pact she had made with a malevolent entity. She warned us that her influence would reach beyond the prison walls and that we would never be free from her grasp. Terrified but determined, we sought the help of a paranormal expert. We learned that Clara had indeed dabbled in dark magic and had bound her spirit to ours through an unholy ritual. To break the curse, we needed to perform a counter-ritual, which required rare and dangerous ingredients. The expert guided us through the process, and we traveled far and wide to gather what we needed. Each step of the journey was fraught with peril, as Clara's spirit relentlessly tried to thwart our efforts. We encountered haunted locations, vengeful spirits, and unexplainable phenomena. But with my mother's spirit guiding us and the strength of our resolve, we pressed on. Finally, we had everything we needed for the ritual. We returned home and prepared for the final confrontation. The atmosphere was thick with tension as we set up the ritual space in the attic, where my mother's spirit had first appeared to me. As we began the incantations, the temperature dropped, and the air crackled with electricity. Shadows danced around us, and we could hear Clara's sinister laughter echoing through the walls. My father and I held hands, drawing strength from each other and from my mother's spirit. The ritual reached its climax, and a blinding light filled the room. Clara's spirit manifested before us, twisted and malevolent. She screamed in rage as the light engulfed her, burning away the darkness that had bound her to us. When the light faded, Clara was gone. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and we felt a sense of peace that had eluded us for so long. My mother's spirit appeared one last time, smiling warmly at us before fading away. her mission finally complete. Life slowly returned to normal. My father and I worked hard to rebuild our lives, free from the shadow of Clara's evil. We moved to a new town, hoping for a fresh start. I found a new school, made new friends, and began to heal from the trauma of the past. But even with Clara gone, I hope you enjoy this video. Please share and subscribe my channel.